Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Slip Safety Show. I'm Christian Harris and I'm the founder of Slip Safety Services. My guest today is David Scott of Keogh's. David is a partner of the law firm and he leads the leisure and hospitality sector practice there. He's been working for a number of years, as he'll tell us, in helping clients in the corporate world to defend insurance claims from personal injury cases. We've had a really interesting chat and we focused a lot on slips, trips and falls claims and what could and should be done better in that regard, but also had a good chat about a big prominent case that David ran, which was an illness outbreak a few years ago, which led to a class action suit that he managed to defend on behalf of his client. And we drew some parallels to that kind of norovirus case and what might well be coming down the track when it comes to coronavirus claims, which, as he actually told me, have already started to come through. I think he said that they've had about 50 already within Keogh's, and we're only in July of 2020 as this is being recorded. I think if you manage any leisure or hospitality facilities in particular, but if you've even got a broader responsibility for risk management, insurance claims and health and safety, you'll find this episode really useful and very, very interesting. If you do find it good, then as always I'd really appreciate any comments, and of course hit subscribe and you'll then be kept up to date with any future episodes of the show as and when they are released. So with that, enough from me, let's get into my conversation with David Scott from Keogh's. David Scott, welcome to the Slip Safety Show.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Are you in the office today?
I am in the office, yes.
I thought the scaffolding behind you would probably not be from a home setting.
No, I like now to get back into the office maybe at least one day a week. Yeah.
Good. So for those that haven't come across you before, do you want to just give a quick overview of Keogh's and then a bit of background on yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a qualified lawyer and now a partner in Keogh's, which is now part of the Davies Group. I've been qualified lawyer for more years than I could care to mention, but if you're going to push me on that, it's 35 years. I qualified in 1987, was 30 years with Hill Dickinson until 2 years ago, when we became part of the National Keogh's LLP.
So the main benefit of being that many years qualified is that it's comfortably lower than your golf handicap. Sorry, your golf handicap's comfortably lower than your years qualified.
Yeah, it's probably about the same. No, yeah. I get where you're coming from. Yeah. So I've been part of the Keogh's organisation and now the wider Davies Group since earlier this year. I head up within the Keogh's practice arena the leisure and hospitality sector within our corporate risk practice here in Liverpool, which we set up 20 years ago, acting for large corporate type clients with generally large deductibles where they're very, very interested in reducing the cost of their overall risk. With a reduction in insurance premiums. We're very heavily sector focused, and I'm fortunate enough to head up the leisure and hospitality side.
Good stuff, and that's we obviously met through the leisure expert panel, which we're both members of a few years ago. Which is like a best practice sharing platform for people interested in risk management in the leisure industry. Now, one of the most prominent cases that you've been involved in was a big illness outbreak case, which was it the first ever class action illness case in the UK?
It was land-based. There'd been, whilst Hill Dickinson, a colleague of mine who's sadly no longer with us, successfully defended a cruise liner outbreak, but the one I was fortunately involved in was the only reported land-based outbreak class action.
Okay. Do you want to give us a quick overview of sort of
Well,
the
in
details of that?
2011, the client, I am allowed to say it's in the public domain, client I've been fortunate to look after for a good number of years, 28 to be precise, it was a Butlins hotel in Bognor Regis in 2007. There was a viral outbreak in the region, which obviously hit the Bognor Regis hotel, causing obviously upset, viral, vomiting, diarrhea symptoms, which then swiftly followed by claimant solicitor firm Owen Mitchell coordinating obviously injured people who wish to claim against the client for obviously their distress, vomiting, diarrhea symptoms, etc., which resulted 3 years after the outbreak in the claimant solicitors issuing a High Court class action involving 219 claimants, issued High Court proceedings against Butlins Limited in 2014, 3 years following the outbreak, which then resulted in rather very interesting High Court proceedings.
Is that, would that have been come under an insurance policy, or would that be?
It would have done, but the client on this occasion is heavily self-insured, obviously with the insurers over and above their excess layer in the background.
Because if you had, if you got 219 claimants, it's not like because they're doing a class action, if your excess is 10k, that 10k becomes one pot, does it? Your excess effectively would be 200,000 or
that is the way that the client operates their insurance program. It's safe to say, obviously, we had a rather large reserve on it because it was back in the day of success fees, the old cost model, 100% uplift and 80 premiums. But that obviously had all to be built into the overall level of reserve. Yeah.
And you managed to bat that one away and get rid of it eventually.
Yes. As soon as the hotel was on green and staff and members could go back on site, Owen Mitchell were very, very quick to sign up claimant solicitors. So it soon became very, very clear very quickly that the client was likely to be faced with obviously personal injury claims. So we were very promptly on site as soon as the resort was reopened to start gathering everything that we thought we would require in anticipation of personal injury claims being brought. So within a week we were on site gathering information, documentation, which was very interesting experience because we had to second guess effectively where the allegations were likely to come from. And I would class that as basically the kitchen sink being thrown at the client, a very much scattergun approach from the claimant to see what sticks, what weaknesses that the client may or may not have, which may have resulted in a chink in the armour, which may have resulted in commercial considerations and settlements being considered. So within the space of a week, we were on site gathering that intelligence from kitchens, from the swimming pools, from all the concessions, because obviously on a resort like Butlins, there's so many areas and facets, from the kitchens to cleanliness to pools to concessions to general hygiene. So it's really quite an intense exercise, but obviously paid dividends at the end. Witness statements gathering, having to second guess which witnesses you're going to need, and especially within obviously the leisure and hospitality sector, making sure you've got statements from those that you need as soon as possible in case they
leave,
they leave, or they're not there next year, 3 years down the line, as happened to be the case, because obviously I touched on before, it was 3 years later that actual court proceedings were issued in the High Court.
Mm.
And as everybody knows, they do have 3 years within which to issue court proceedings.
Yeah.
So there was that delay, whether it was tactical from Irwin Mitchell, in the hope that our defence would have been weakened in that intervening period for reasons we just touched on.
Mm.
Key witnesses gone, memories fade, documents lost, etc., etc. But
Yeah.
the early proactivity reaped huge dividends almost 5 years down the line, when the matter came before, was just about to come before the High Court for a 3-week trial.
Mm. Mm. And that, I mean, that's not obviously a typical case that we would look at, but I thought it was interesting to talk about, because I can see, well, it'd be interesting to get your view, but I wonder, I can see the potential for similar types of claims
Absolutely.
coming down the line as a result of the whole kind of coronavirus situation, and probably the response would need to be quite similar in terms of getting proactively on site and gathering information as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the key, you're quite right. It's an identical analogy, and yes, we will anticipate, and yes, we are seeing COVID-related claims throughout the various sectors that we look after already.
Okay.
Primarily in the retail sector, as things happen, because obviously they're ahead of the L&H sector from reopening, etc., and have been reopened throughout. But we're already seeing, I think we've seen about 50 COVID-related type claims to date come through.
As in sort of employer's liability, I've contracted the virus because, and it's your fault, Mr. Employer.
Yeah. A stress-related claim, because if you look at what those people have been asked to do, it's completely different from what they're obviously been used to doing. So they've had to retrain, upskill, do this, do that, do the other, and it's leading to all sorts of interesting and, I won't say spurious claims, but interesting type claims. But the analogy is the same. I mean, so just following on the outbreak one, it turned out to be basically, it was a norovirus. It was an airborne viral outbreak, nothing to do with bacteria, food, contamination, etc. So the upshot of that case was, as I say, because of that proactivity, correct choice of experts to support the insured's, the Butlins' norovirus policy, resulted in the claimant solicitors discontinuing 3 weeks before the 3-week High Court trial, and paying our clients a substantial sum in respect of our costs. So yes, the similarities are there. Policies, procedures, documentation, which hopefully is what all the leisure and hospitality clients have been doing over the last 2 months towards reopening. And again, hopefully that work that has been done, again, will stand them in good stead to look to defend claims which are undoubtedly going to arise.
I guess it's going to be quite difficult, though, well, I suppose it's easier for an employee potentially to prove if there's an outbreak in there, like some of those the farm and the chicken factories and things like that, where there's been a huge outbreak in one particular building or business. It's probably easier for them to try and cross that line of burden of proof than a member of the public. If you're a member of the gym, for example, it's going to be quite difficult to prove that you've caught the virus in a gym, isn't it?
It is. The causation aspect is going to be a large hurdle, I think, for claimant solicitors to overcome. And a lot is going to depend on I think, the judiciary and the courts' attitude and approach to these kind of cases. From a public policy perspective, I suspect it might be easier with an NHS, perhaps EL or employee, to perhaps get over that threshold about PPE and this and that and the other. But yeah, there is that causation. How can you prove that you contracted it on a Butlins resort, in a gym, in a spot? It is quite hard, and the court's attitudes and will be interesting. No doubt will be destined for the Supreme Court at some stage, like
bound
the mesothelioma and asbestosis cases and the apportionment of liability and as they determine. So yes, I mean,
sort of fly over by helicopters or something at the moment. So sorry about the noise.
That's okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what we've been advising the clients that we're acting for is just ensure you follow government and HSE guidance that's been given over the weeks, the months. Document it, train the staff again before they reopen, which I'm aware that most of the clients have been doing intensive upskilling and training of the staff that are coming back on. I'm saying to clients, if you portray to the members of the public that you've taken it safely with hand sanitizers, and they can see that you really have got their interests and well-being as well as your staff's well-being at heart, then hopefully it will encourage people to return and enjoy in a safe environment. As well as being able to document and defend claims if and when, or as and when they materialize.
Yeah, a few people have been speculating as to whether this is going to be the new kind of PPI trend. It's going to be adverts everywhere saying, "Did you get the virus?" And people trying to sort of jostle people into making claims. Which, and I guess, as with all claims, there's in certain cases, if people are, there's always a commercial reality to it, isn't there? And some people are probably going to get settlements because actually it's not worth the fight of the cost of fighting it. Maybe, I don't know.
That's historically and been the case, and claimants solicitors. I mean, we operate a thing called know your opponent within the organisation. So, you do understand how certain claimant solicitors' behaviours have been, and you monitor that and respond accordingly. But yes, claimant solicitors will be looking for the soft touch, the easy wins, because obviously they've been short of funds and haven't really been issuing and generating claims for the last 3 months. So claims management companies will start up behind the scenes to look to
mobilize,
advertise. Have you been affected? And we know they're already doing that already. Primarily, I suspect, as I say, sadly against the NHS. And so time will tell.
Which is a shame, So over and above that type of kind of less common claim, I mean, as in the norovirus and class action and stuff, I mean, what within the sectors that you look after, hospitality and leisure, what would be the most common types of claims that you would be seeing, in the good old days, shall we say?
Good old days, and going forward, every client, when you look at their claims portfolio, number one is always slips and trips. It's there right at the top, whether it's retail or leisure and hospitality. So, everybody's still going to have a claim. It's that old adage, for the claimants solicitors, where there's a claim or where there's blame, there's a claim. But that is not always the case. I mean, the clients that we look after and advocate is, if you have all your policies, procedures documented, training programs, these claims are defensible and should be defended all the way through to trial, where judges, we find, are very willing to find for a corporate clients who have taken health and safety seriously, have implemented policies and procedures, have the documented check sheets. It's not strict liability at all. We have a very, very good defense success rate. So it slips and trips. As I say, they are going to happen, but it's just how you deal with it and how you respond to them.
Yeah. And you think that's going to continue in the future, basically, based on what you've said? I mean, I think obviously we're going to have the world's clearly going to be very different, or it's starting to be very different, but these old risks are still going to be there alongside the new risk of viruses and outbreaks.
I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it? Especially in the wet slipping pools, swimming pool areas, spas, gyms, people are going to slip over. People are going to trip over curbstones, potholes. They're going to slip on external metal fire escape access routes to accommodation units.
Yeah.
They're going to slip on wooden decking. They're going to slip on. So yeah, accidents undoubtedly clearly will continue.
Yeah.
It's just a question of whether or not there is blame.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for anybody that doesn't know, do you want to just quickly explain what the kind of burden of proof is when it comes to blame? So what's the line at which beyond that line it's the company's fault, and below it it's not the company's fault?
Okay. Obviously, there's two main aspects. There's the employer's liability claims and there's public liability claims. The majority, obviously, in the sector are public liability because of the footfall, the number of visitors and guests who come to the gyms and venues. So the applicable law is the Occupiers Liability Act, 1957, whereby the occupier, as in the resort owner, has a duty of care to their guests that they are reasonably safe, and they have to take reasonable measures to ensure somebody's safety. And it's that interpretation of reasonableness that obviously the judges have to decide. The threshold of a liability case for a judge to determine is on balance of probabilities. So it's 51% and 49% in the claimant's favour, as opposed to the criminal, which is beyond all reasonable doubt. So the civil liability is the balance of probabilities. And at the end of the day, a judge will decide whose evidence do I prefer at the end of the day. Have the defendant satisfied me, or that they have operated a reasonable, safe system to ensure their guests' safety. As I say, it's not a strict liability. Accidents will happen. But then it's effectively the burden then will go to the defendant to show that they have taken all reasonable, practicable steps to keep their guests safe, or as safe as they possibly can, reasonably practically can.
And when
so it's quite a simple. Go on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say you're right. It's quite a simple thing to understand. I suppose it's just I thought it'd be worth explaining if people hadn't heard the explanation before.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Hi guys, sorry to interrupt the flow of the show, but I wanted to give a very quick plug for our sponsor, which actually is me and my business, Slip Safety Services. As you'll have gathered from tuning in, we're passionate about three things: slip safety, cleanliness, and hygiene. If any of those topics float your boat and you'd like to learn more about what we do, the outcomes we help to generate for our clients, and how it all really works, then please visit our website, slipsafety.co.uk/start. There you'll find a raft of information, from articles to videos to white papers to self-help tools, and you can start to delve deep into the rabbit hole of the world that we populate, which is all about making the world a cleaner, safer, more hygienic place. Cheers. So when a claim is successful then against an occupier, what tends to be the reason? Let's talk about a slip and trip claim, because that's kind of what we've been talking about. What tend to be the reasons that is successful then, rather than it being able to be defended?
The operator effectively can't show a reasonable system of whether it's a slip or a trip, inspection, maintenance, have that then documented, have the appropriate risk assessments to show they have assessed that particular risk. They don't have the policies and procedures in place. Their staff aren't appropriately trained in how to implement those risk assessments or policies and procedures. We don't have the appropriate witness evidence, to give evidence, what I say is as first hand, as in to the court, to demonstrate those documented systems, because it's all well and good having a sheet of paper saying, yes, I checked that area, I ticked it off at 11 a.m., 12 o'clock. If we don't then have that, I call it live witness evidence for the judge to hear, to bring that document to life. So there's a whole host really of pieces of the jigsaw that we would need to have to be able to defend, or vice versa. If we don't have any of those, then sorry, can you hear that? Sorry, I'll just, which would lead us to then to have to take a view. And if
so
that's
it's all about
the case,
being thorough, isn't it? Really,
it's being thorough. It's being on the front foot. And if as I say, working with clients, if you get all that into place, then your defensibility rates go through the roof. If they issue proceedings, your success at trial goes through the roof, and that should then have the knock-on effect on, all being well, insurance premiums. So come renewal, you've got a good claims history of repudiation, defensibility, proactivity from the risk perspective, which obviously puts you in as good a place as you can in the insurance market for insurance premiums in what is obviously a hardening insurance market.
And also, as you touched on earlier, you get that reputation among the claimant solicitors that you're not a soft touch.
Absolutely, and it does. It really. I mean, as I say, being fortunate to look after Bourne Leisure for such a long time, with so many successfully reported Court of Appeal cases, I think our reputation does go before us.
Helpful. And you had bringing that all together. You had another case recently, which was a nightclub dance floor. Was that Bourne Leisure as well? Or?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was a case of Robinson, and again, it was a Butlins venue. Now, Butlins on their 3 resorts hold varying weekends, from family orientated to adult weekends, where the capacity in Centre Stage and the Skyline Pavilion can reach 4,000, 5,000 adults consuming
social distance.
Not now, but you can imagine enjoying themselves with copious amounts of alcohol, and that's what it is. Which that obviously then leads to a huge risk of spillages, and trying to do your best to keep that area as free as you can. Now, in the Robinson case, we'd been trying for a while to put the defendants into as best a position that we could to present the case to the court and say, look, it is a reasonable duty. It's not a strict liability. And then over the years, we've developed our system of cleaning, inspection, checking. So on that particular case, we had regular DJ announcements. We had plasma screens around saying, not to take drinks onto the dance floor. We had people going round as best they could, doing the best they can in that particular environment. We had our security guards also trying to prevent, as best they can, grown-ups taking drinks onto a dance floor. And we ended up taking some video cam footage to present to the court to show, look, yes, we're the occupier, yes, we have a duty, we understand and appreciate that, but the duty is reasonable, and these are all the reasonable steps that we have taken, have documented, presented the witness evidence, and the judge in that case, very, very sensible reasoning and rational, said, well, what more can the defendants do? They have complied with the duty of reasonableness. You can't barricade off the dance floor with barriers, and it's just not practical to do that. So you've got one sort of avenue onto the dance floor when you have 4,000 people enjoying themselves. So
and you can't have a super anti-slip outro dance floor, because then you can't dance on it. So that's not reasonable either.
So it was really, I was really, if you look back at sort of highlights, I haven't retired yet, but if I were to, I think that would be one of them, because we'd worked with the client for so long to learn from, a judgment that we might have lost in the past, take on board the comments, and implement them to get to that result, which has, resonated really, really well within the sector. It was being reported, it's regularly reported, it's regularly relied upon. Yes, each case clearly is on its own merits and on its own facts, but it demonstrates what can be done from batting away these claims at pre-litigation, all being well, and then even if they litigate, to test our resolve, that you can get to that end result.
Yeah, of course, that that success for you guys doesn't mean that if somebody slips over on a dance floor in a different venue with a different operator, that they can't be successful because that other operator might not have had the robust systems in place that Born Leisure did, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But it's to me, maybe it's just me, to me, for an operator, it's quite simple to put yourself into that position to be able to repudiate. And hopefully, certainly the clients that we look after, we work with them, as you would do in your business, to get them into that position where they can reduce the risk, they can reduce the risk of accidents, and if they happen, they can repudiate and defend. And as I say, it's all about the overall cost of risk to an operator. In my eyes, it's not just how well you handle that claim. It's the overall, right, what can we do? What lessons can we learn to either prevent it from occurring again, or being able to repudiate it if it does, if the accident is bound to happen. And it really does have a knock-on effect on insurance premium. Within a 12-month period, certainly 18 months, 2 years, if the broker insurer sees what an operator is doing about risk and taking it seriously, then it reaps benefits.
Particularly now in this hard market, as you said earlier, risk management and doing all of these proactive steps to mitigate your risk and to defend claims better, and it's all part of a big jigsaw. But it's more important than ever now, because I think the rates are going up, and the only way to really prevent your rate from going up to an astronomical degree is to prove that you're good at risk management.
Exactly. And I think working with brokers and listening to what they're seeing, the market is hardening, and I think operators are looking more at taking a greater share of the risk to reduce the overall insurance premium. For lots of reasons. They don't have the immediate outlay of a huge insurance premium. They might only settle or pay a claim as and when it's needed, which could be 6 months down the line. So more cash in the bank, more cash flow, more cash back into the business to sustain it in these difficult times. There's lots of reasons why it makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Well, other than those two cases, I'm sure the third highlight of your career must be that birdie I made on the 7th at Birkdale. But
no, sadly not. It was the highlight on that was, I'm sure he won't mind me saying on this, is Paul Witherspoon at now Chubb, who joined us. I think were you there on that day?
Yeah. Is it the third or the fourth?
The fourth, where he had that hole in one on the par 3. Yeah.
We were
still dining out on that.
We were about were we 1 or 2 groups behind them?
I can't remember. Behind. We were coming out the third.
Yeah. That was a good day.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy the 17th though. I think I had an absolute nightmare on the 17th. But beautiful course. So.
That's not bad if you got to the 17th and only had a nightmare on the 17th. That's
pretty
good.
True. I'm probably forgetting. I had a few bad dreams on some other holes, but but the nightmare was the 17th.
Yeah. Now it's back open, and I've got clients chomping at the bit. So fortunately, I've got about 3 or 4 games in the next 2-3 weeks. So.
Oh, good. Well, that's nice. Yeah, that's good. Good to get back. I've literally not played for 2 years, so which is crazy. Just been sort of very busy and just not really had the opportunity. But we'll get a game in sometime soon. So thinking about slipping and tripping accidents, then obviously, because that's kind of where my focus is a bit more. we've talked about some of the things that people can do in terms of systems and processes and so on. One of the questions that always comes up to me is around yellow signs. So what's your view in terms of, is having a yellow sign helpful or not, or is it helpful in certain circumstances and not in others? I mean, how would you sort of describe that?
I would always advocate that they do have a use. I've heard it said, well, you just put them out there willy-nilly and whatever, but even if you do that, that shows you've given it some consideration, and that's supplemented by the regular, whether it's hourly, 2-hourly, physical checks, documented physical checks.
Yeah.
It is difficult in venues such as large nightclub areas and whatever, because spillages occur within seconds. So a cleaner could go in at 11 o'clock, and 2 minutes later it could be a wash with whatever it could be a wash with. And that comes down to the judge's assessment of reasonableness. You can't keep going in every 5 minutes. It's what a judge would deem appropriate for a busy nightclub, whether it's half hourly or hourly or whatever.
And it's
so I would always
advocate,
advocate there. But I understand claimants' solicitors will say, well, it was over there, but the spillage was over there. Well, why was it put there? But I would still advocate that they were put out. And then obviously if the cleaner is in there and sees the spillage, will obviously move it appropriately to where the spillage was, or where it's recently been cleaned or mopped up if it was still not totally dry.
The cases that I've seen where they've been more of a hindrance, these yellow signs, are where it was kind of like that was the only thing that people were doing. They weren't doing the other aspects, so therefore there wasn't a system, and therefore it wasn't reasonable.
No, I would not look to defend a case on that basis to court. I don't think the judge would see that as sufficient to discharge the duty.
And what about? I remember you were in a panel discussion at the LEP conference, and this question came up about check sheets. So what's the view on those? How does that work?
It's a good one. I mean, me being me, old school, I still like the hard copy paper version, but recognizing IT and technology these days, the courts, I think, are more inclined to look to accept, as long as you've got I call it this live witness behind it to explain, demonstrate what they do, how that equipment was used, what that equipment is telling the judge on the other side. I wouldn't rely on just a printout, for example, from a device without that live evidence from that person who conducted that inspection.
Because it's all subjective, isn't it, at the end of the day, or the final decision has an element of subjectivity to it.
Of course, it's as I say, it's really, I mean, this is something that we do. We do witness training, because we know at the end of the day, a judge doesn't know the claimant, doesn't know our witnesses, and it's very subjective. It's on the day who that judge prefers. And if you put yourself in the best possible position with your live witnesses, the odds are stacked in our favor. The witness is prepped, is warned. We would hold a pre-trial telephone conference with the witnesses. We talk the witnesses through as to what to expect, so they're fully prepared, because we recognized that they're not senior management who we're asking to go to court. They are cleaners, maintenance men, who would not really understand what the whole process. So it's important that they're supported, trained and guided as to what to expect.
And I suppose
it just takes one throwaway comment at a trial from a clever claimant barrister whose job is to tie them up in knots. And 18 months worth of hard work could have gone down the drain through no fault of the witness's fault. But if they're not properly trained, supported, explained, then it's going to happen. But
loose lips sink ships.
Exactly.
And I suppose if going back to that subjectivity piece, I guess if a claim was, 99% certain that it was at fault, then you'd have settled it. And equally, if it was 1% certain, it would have been withdrawn. It wouldn't ever get to trial. So I suppose that anything that gets to trial is probably in that sort of 60-40 range, is it?
Anything that I would recommend to a client to go to trial, I would be 95% certain we would be successful.
Okay.
Because of the track record that we have with the clients. We don't advise a client at all to go to trial if there's weakness, and it will be settled at the pre-litigation stage or the claims handling stage, because the deficiencies, the weaknesses will clearly be apparent.
They'd come out, and you'd have to take the pragmatic view, even if actually, as you say, accidents happen and whatever. That you still will end up paying out some claims, because systems, anytime there's a human involved, we're all fallible, aren't we? And so I suppose the system can always.
Yeah. So that comes down to the early proactivity of handling that claim. The use of the portal to keep it within the MOJ portal, and the cost benefit that flow from that, which is obviously another commercial factor. But again, I'm saying to clients, yes, think about it, but no, don't. So I don't think you should settle this case. You have that soft touch, you have that social media. All you need to do is go and say you've slipped in here, and you're going to get a couple of £1,000, whatever. It's there is still that factor at play as well.
Absolutely. And what's your view on the value of having kind of slip testing data then, when it comes to being able to defend claims? Is that helpful?
I've always been an advocate of that. As much proactivity as you can throw at the claimant solicitors when a claim comes in. So yes, obviously in your arena, it's not exclusively swimming pools, but they're the main culprits or of where claims are coming from. People just think in a swimming pool environment, if they slip, they've got a claim. No.
Because actually, you're in a wet environment, so arguably the duty of you as an individual is higher there than in a changing room, where it's less likely the floor's going to be wet.
Yeah, and what I find in those is, again, it depends on the claimant solicitors. Perhaps sometimes that some will just ask for the cleaning regime documentation, and how often is the squeegee clean, whatever. What's your procedure and protocol? Some might, but some don't go down. Well, what's the slip resistance quality of the tile? And that's obviously where, if an operator does conduct slip testing, again, on the basis that it's it's within the HSE parameters and guidelines, then happy days. Throw that to the other, and that claim should not proceed any further. So I'm all in favour of that proactive approach, both from a positive perspective and a negative. It tells the operator anyway, if it's not compliant, well, you've got a choice, haven't you? You either look to ensure it becomes compliant by whatever methods, or if it happens again, you bang to rights. So it's dual purpose, positive and a negative. And I'd rather go down the positive route and say, look, we're proactive. We conduct whatever slip resistant testing once every, whatever's practical, certainly once a year, I would imagine. But
I think once a year would be
your expertise on the effectiveness of how the frequency of slip resistant. But I would be looking for perhaps once a year. From a defensibility perspective,
I think once a year again is reasonable and practicable, because you can't be slip testing every month, obviously, doing it properly, because it takes time and whatever. But equally, anything less than annually is probably a little bit too infrequent for it to hold as much weight. Where if as you say, if you've got a claim comes in and you can chuck back a big folder that thick of the last 2 or 3 years worth of testing, but also the cleaning regimes, but also the check sheets, but also the training. That's very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. That claim will then go away, or it should go away.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult. I mean, I appreciate operators have different sort of budgets, constraints and whatever, but It's looking at their claims history. It's looking at trends or hotspots or whatever, and say, actually, okay, well, we've had to incur £50,000 in, well, yourself in paying out those claims. Well, it's going to cost us £5,000, whatever it costs to put that right and prevent it. It's economic sense, I think, isn't it? But,
That's certainly my view, obviously, as you know, and it's just trying to get that message across to people. I think it's always easier to sell. What's the best analogy? It's easier to sell an aspirin, isn't it, than to sell vitamins to prevent a headache, if you know what I mean. But we're trying to promote the vitamin approach.
And it just takes one, and with slipping accidents, they can be quite serious because they might bang their heads, and that could lead to all sorts of potential complications. So it is. I'd say it's a balancing exercise for the operator. I understand that. That's where they need really to look at their claims history over the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and with the data that we provide clients that we act for, it really is looking at their overall risk, identifying it and saying, actually, what about this? We're seeing a bit of a trend here, or there's been 3 accidents on the external fire escape staircases to check it plating, whatever. Do you want to go and check that? So it's all about analyzing risk across the board.
What's the biggest slip trip case you've had in terms of like the quantum, either reserved quantum or sort of settled or paid out quantum? I'm testing you now.
Yeah, I mean, touch wood, whatever you want to touch. I think the clients I've acted for over the years haven't had too many £1 million plus claims, which is fortunate. I acted for an operator where a young man just ran straight out from the changing rooms into a shallow pool and became tetraplegic as a result. Again, we looked at the liability issues, and fortunately we didn't end up paying any huge amounts of money in that, but potentially it could have been, because these accidents, as we know, just happen in a split second, and the consequences can be catastrophic.
That's one of the problems with slips, I think, that people, because they're so frequent and so common, as you said, and there's kind of this element sometimes of humor around it. So if you Google slip accident, what you find is videos of people sort of slipping over, dramatically and making it a bit of a joke. But obviously, in most cases, if you are slipping, you're slipping on some sort of very hard surface because there's liquid or other contamination on, and therefore you're falling down onto that hard surface. And obviously, if you bang your elbow, that's one thing, but if you bang your head, that's another thing entirely.
Absolutely. So it's a fun environment, but potentially dangerous environment in the wet areas.
No, definitely. Great. Well, I'm conscious of time, and I really appreciate you giving such a good amount of time to us today.
All right, it's fine.
If anybody wants to get in touch with you and have a further chat or learn more about how you could help them within leisure and hospitality, what's the best way of people getting in touch?
No, by all means, it's probably the email, which is dscott, SCOTT, at keoghs.co.uk, and I'll be delighted to help. Thanks, Christian.
Yeah, no worries. I'll put that up on the screen and in the notes, and then people D Scott should be quite easy to spell, but Keoghs might be a bit confusing potentially. So I'll put that up. And great. Well, thanks very much. Really appreciate it, and look forward to catching up with you soon when we get back into the city again, or as we said, perhaps a game of golf at some point.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Christian. Thank you. Cheers.